Maundy, Thursday, the epistle, the New Testament reading is Hebrews 9. This is hard. Hebrews is hard, like Romans and others of Paul's letters. So what can we say here? It's talking about Christ being the high priest and entering the greater and more perfect tabernacle. What was the tabernacle? Well, that was the first place where God lived, where he dwelt. They had the tabernacle, which was sort of a temporary dwelling until the temple got built, and that was a permanent dwelling. Then the first temple got destroyed, and then after the Babylonian exile, they came back and built a second temple. That temple got destroyed by the Romans in the year 70 AD. And so the temple was where God's glory was. It was filled with his glory. There were a lot of rules about who could go in and when and what they had to do before they went in. Because just like we keep seeing in Exodus 24, you can't come close to the presence of God and survive. And so in the time of the tabernacle, they were moving it from place to place as they wandered around and as God moved them. And there was this one time where it was about to tip over and some guy reached out to grab it and steady it and he died instantly. You can't do that because the presence of God is separated from us by the chasm of our sin until Christ. And so it says in verse 11, Hebrews 9:11, when Christ appeared as a high priest of the good things to come, he entered through the greater and more perfect tabernacle. What's that? His own blood. His glory is revealed through his own dying and rising. He doesn't have to. He's a high priest who sacrifices himself. He's the priest, but he's also the victim. Nobody's ever been that before. That would be impossible. No sheep or goat or ram or bull sacrifices itself to offer itself as an atonement for sins. And no priest in Israel or anywhere else would lay himself on the altar and offer himself as a blood sacrifice for the people. Jesus is the only high priest who's like this. So that's how he obtained. In verse 12 it says that's how he obtained our eternal redemption, by being both the priest and the victim, the sacrificial victim. His blood was the only blood that could do that, because he was sinless and did not deserve to die. Verse 13, if the blood of goats and bulls and heifers can cleanse us from sin, then so much more so the blood of Christ. The Jewish system relied on animal sacrifices in order to accomplish forgiveness of their sins. The Jewish system is done. There shouldn't be Jews anymore. Christ rendered that unnecessary because his blood is perfect and it atones once for all sins. And so, verse 15, he's now the mediator of a new covenant. And that's kind of what Maundy, Thursday is about. Jesus institutes the Eucharist, the Last Supper, us receiving his body and his blood inside our very bodies. Eat this, drink this. That's a new covenant. And I think we talked maybe for Lent too about the establishment of the covenant with Abraham, when God said, I want you to move from here to there, and I'm going to bless you, I'm going to make you numerous, and every family on earth is going to be blessed through you. Why? Because you need to be a blessing to other people. I'm going to give you all this stuff so that you can be a blessing to other people. That was the Abrahamic covenant. Jesus comes and there's a new covenant. So the writer of Hebrews is saying in verse 15, he's the mediator of a new covenant. A death took place for the redemption of transgressions that were committed under the first covenant. Even though there were all these, a covenant with Noah, a covenant with Moses, a covenant with Abraham, a covenant with David, additional covenants with, I think there was a covenant with Ezra. But transgressions were still committed under those. And they needed then to be covered by blood sacrifices from animals. Now, with this new covenant, we receive the eternal inheritance. We don't have to sprinkle ourselves with literal blood. We don't have to go to a temple where we purchase an animal and watch it be slaughtered and have it for. We don't do that anymore. Because there's this new covenant, and it's an eternal covenant, and it's available to anyone who wants to believe that Jesus is the Christ. John 20, these things are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and in believing have life. So here's this new covenant, and it's available to you, to anybody. For where a covenant is, there must of necessity be the death of the one who made it. I don't exactly understand this. He talks about this for a couple of the verses. Verse 18, even the first covenant was not inaugurated without blood. In order for, there's legal things about this that I don't understand. So I'm not going to say any more about that. When the commandment had been spoken by Moses, here in verse 19, we get to verse 19 and 20 and 21 are all referring to what we read in the Old Testament reading, Exodus 24. When every commandment had been spoken by Moses to all the people, he took the blood of all these animals and he sprinkled it both on the book itself, God's words, and on all the people, saying, and then verse 20 is the direct quote from Exodus 24, this is the blood of the covenant which God commanded you. And in the same way, Moses sprinkled the tabernacle where God dwelt and all the vessels of the ministry with the blood. All of it. They had all these rituals that God said, this is what you have to do in order to worship me properly. We don't do any of that anymore. We have the cup of salvation, which is the new covenant. We just drink a little bit of wine, and that's the covenant that Christ established, which replaces all the old covenants. How far do we go here? Verse 22, according to the law, all things are cleansed with blood, and without shedding of the blood there is no forgiveness. Jesus had to die. Way back at the beginning, Genesis 3, which we read on the first Sunday of Lent, once sin entered, there's this impossible chasm between God and humanity and his creation. And the only way to close that chasm is to fill it with blood. At first it was just the blood of animals. Then it was the blood of Jesus. That's how that chasm closes. That's how we have the Spirit in our hearts. There can't be forgiveness without bloodshed. And once the perfect God himself shed his sinless blood, that chasm is closed forever. And so now we live in this covenant. We are the people of the covenant, believers who share in his body and blood, and who live according to the Spirit, and who return back to the Lord all of the things that he has given to us. So this is kind of one of the themes of Maundy, Thursday. We don't have anything to bring except what he already has given us. It already belongs to him, and we return it to him with our things.